Chapter 4. Thank you. Part 1. Thanks life, and life will thank you. We finished the previous chapter on compassion, and we'll start this final chapter on gratitude. Just as the will to make individual changes cannot take place without compassion, no change is possible without gratitude. Yesterday no longer exists and tomorrow may never come, so we must thank life every second, for it is a gift. That's why we call the eternity of each moment unfolding before our eyes the present. Why does racism, hatred, revenge, wars, religion? I like this speech by Daniel Balawan. I'd like to make it clear that I believe in the theory that he was murdered so that he would not reveal, as he had planned, an arms deal on the Paris-Dakar route. You can find a presentation of Jean Pernon's book, Daniel Balawan, Meurtre déguisé, Daniel Balawan, Murder in Disguise, on the internet. There's a good reason why adults don't go to peace demonstrations, is that they've already had their war and believe that we don't have one. We often hear adults say, yes, it's obvious that you haven't experienced war. There should be a good war. Well, I say to their faces, we've got a war. Fuck the veterans. We've got better things to do than deal with old wars, and that we don't have time to demonstrate for that anymore. That the days of commemoration that there are for the old wars would be better off demonstrating for today's wars. I would tell today's soldiers who think they're living for peace that it's all lies, that it's the bastards in power who have created wars wherever they are for ideologies and religions, and that it's all bullshit. I will tell my brothers sent to Lebanon that they don't believe for a second that they're there for peace, but that they're there to use weapons for the arms trade and industry. They are there to defend the ideas of the Russians or the Americans, depending on which side you are on, and the Syrians and the Palestinians, and that it's all shit. We have to tell people that now we have to change our lives. We'd like to teach our children something different than what we've been taught, that enough is enough, that we want peace, that we want real peace, that we want all these people to go away, and that we want to stop being led to believe that all this is between socialism and capitalism. There was Kant, Marx, there will be other philosophers, there was before and there will be after, other things will happen, it's all crap, and fuck all the powers that be, whatever their ideologies. Here is the French original version.
Sur le Liban et sur la guerre.
D'abord, il faut tout de suite vous préciser que vous êtes concerné directement par ce qui...
Oui, enfin, je ne veux pas faire pleurer dans les chaumières, mais je veux dire qu'on parlait tout à l'heure des adultes qui ne vont pas aux manifestations pacifistes, et je crois qu'il y a une juste raison à ça, c'est qu'ils ont eu leur guerre et qu'ils croient que nous n'en avons pas. On entend souvent dire les adultes, oui, ça se voit que vous n'avez pas connu la guerre, il vous faudrait une bonne guerre. Moi, je leur dis maintenant, bien en face, on l'a, la guerre. Je voudrais dire devant tout le monde que j'emmerde les anciens combattants, que j'en ai rien à foutre de tout ça, qu'on a autre chose à foutre que de s'occuper des anciennes guerres, qu'on n'a plus le temps de manifester pour ça, et que les jours des commémorations qu'il y a pour les anciennes guerres, on ferait mieux ces jours-là de manifester pour les guerres qu'il y a actuellement. Et que tout ça, si mon frère pouvait m'entendre, je lui dirais de revenir, parce qu'on lui dit qu'il va là-bas pour la paix, et ça, ce sont des mensonges. Il va là-bas pour les enfoirés des pouvoirs qui ont créé les guerres, où qu'elles soient, pour des idéologies et des religions, et que tout ça, c'est de la saloperie. Alors si mon frère m'entend, qu'il ne croit pas une seconde qu'il est là-bas pour la paix, il est là-bas pour utiliser des armes, pour faire le commerce et l'industrie des armes, il est là-bas pour défendre les idées des Russes ou des Américains, selon le camp dans lequel on se trouve, et des Syriens et des Palestiniens, et que tout ça, c'est de la merde. Il faut le dire maintenant aux gens, il faut qu'on nous change la vie, on voudrait apprendre à nos enfants autre chose que ce qu'on nous a appris. Alors je dis que tout ça suffit, qu'il nous faut la paix, qu'on veut la vraie paix, et qu'on veut que tous ces gens-là s'en aillent, et qu'on arrête de nous faire croire que tout se passe entre le socialisme et le capitalisme. Il y a eu Keynes, il y a eu Marx, il y aura d'autres philosophes, il y en a eu avant, il y en aura après, il y aura d'autres choses qui se passeront. Tout ça, moi je le dis, je le pense sincèrement, c'est de la merde, et on n'en veut plus. Et j'emmerde tous les pouvoirs, d'où qu'ils soient, quelles que soient leurs idéologies.
Resentment, revenge, anger, etc. stem from the fact that we don't cultivate the seeds of gratitude within ourselves. Leave hate to those who are too weak to love. Martin Luther King. Martin Luther King was an African-American pastor and non-violent campaigner for black civil rights in the United States, for peace and against poverty. An admirer of Gandhi, Martin Luther King traveled to India in 1954 to deepen his knowledge of Gandhi's Satyagraha principles. He became the youngest winner of the Nobel Peace Prize in 1964 for his non-violent struggle against racial segregation and for peace. The societal system is so intensely ingrained in us that we don't have the free will to decide who we really are. Compassion is not part of the school curriculum, unlike competition and rivalry. We are trained to become insensitive and therefore uncompassionate. It's a protection against the harshness of the system we live in. Turning a blind eye to injustice and inequality is easier than filling our hearts with compassion. The latter option opens up the probability of suffering because it's hard to be truly compassionate without empathy. And these are two values that flourish together when we cultivate them. In fact, people who don't need to work on their sense of compassion are often empathetic, even hyper-empathetic. Compassion comes naturally to them, but for most of us, feeling compassion has become complicated. Often we think that the other person is getting what he or she deserves. She deserved it. Well done to him or her, etc. We lack benevolence, empathy and compassion. Happiness is not external to us. We are happiness, and like a flower, it can be watered. In Buddhism, our mind is compared to muddy water. If we let it stand, the mud becomes trapped at the bottom and clear water surfaces, symbolizing our clarified thoughts. Our tormented mind is also compared to a lake whose reflections are distorted by storms and waves. The image of external reality is not correct because of this distortion due to the movement of the waves. But when the wind dies down, the lake gives an exact mirror image of reality. The Dalai Lama says, for example, that every time you speak badly of someone, imagine excrement coming out of your mouth. I can assure you that once you've drilled this phrase into your head and decided to put it into practice, you'll stop talking badly about others. In the end, the most important thing is ourselves, so the time you waste talking about others is time you don't give yourself. What's more, what we criticize in others is often what we don't want to see in ourselves. Thoughts and beliefs makes up who we are. Since childhood, we've been conditioned by the thoughts of those who shape our lives. But these thoughts are not necessarily the right ones. It all depends on whether our educators use words for or against us. Gandhi's quote, "Be the change you want to see in the world," mentioned above, is one of many that show us the way to personal transformation. We're always complaining about society, wars, injustices, etc. as the cause of our malaise. We can't find peace in the world if we don't first change the chaos inside us. We can't claim peace in the world if we're at war within ourselves. This is what humanity will be experimenting in the next few years, a consciousness towards spiritual evolution and therefore an evolution of consciousness. The more we succeed in connecting with the beauty and energy within and around us, the more we evolve and the higher our vibration. In this way, we can break down the barrier between the material world and the invisible world that is the source of our creation. I don't believe that there is a man in the clouds, God, who is at the origin of our creation and who could observe us from the sky. But I do believe in quantum physics, the physical theory that mind influences matter. There's an invisible, energetic world out there, and it's this energy that we need to feel happy, in harmony with ourselves and nature, at peace. This is the energy we need to reconnect to in order to live harmoniously. We can reorganize life in a different way and work much less to have more time for ourselves. This invisible energy, which we can channel through certain practices such as yoga and meditation, reconnects us to the cosmos and places us at the center of everything. It also enables us to be much more productive because it makes us more efficient. It's not in the government's interest for us to be connected to this invisible world because we'd only like to acquire what we really need. We can emerge from the slavery of this materialistic society. It's one of the most powerful dictatorships around, making us prisoners enslaved by the possession of material goods that satisfy our dependence on material things. It's a vicious circle, like a drug. Work more to earn more, to spend more, without even having the time to enjoy it. It's manipulation in disguise because of course it's not the people who benefit most from working so much. When a sufficient number of people, a critical mass, emerge from their ignorance of this illusion of always more, will evolve towards a greater consciousness. This spiritual path leads to the re-establishment of order on earth. Respect, tolerance, fairness and compassion will reign, and the world will finally see the light in the darkness. At present, we are the victims of a collective mass enslavement, but soon, on a global scale, we will recognize our fundamental nature as spiritual. The evolution of consciousness will be even more meteoric than the technological leap our civilization has made since the 2000s. We'll be calling on the national education system to adapt the school curriculum to our awakening, instilling in children meditation, yoga, earth culture, spiritual energy and all the values of altruism. Inculcating compassion rather than competition, unity rather than individuality, cooperation rather than separation will automatically engender behavior that respects all living species, including our planet Earth. At the moment, the current school system only allows us to use the left hemisphere of our brain, thus separating us from the creative part of our being, which is essential to our equilibrium. As quantum physics explains, the universe is pure energy and our intentions affect it. Eventually, we'll realize that connecting with the universe brings us the energy we need for true fulfillment, as well as a feeling of abundance, lightness, joy, and absolute security. The collective core will eventually join this path and reclaim its right to happiness. We must free ourselves from our mechanisms of domination and forgive humanity all the blood that has been spilled. We must want the best for others. We are the world, and little by little, this individual evolution will bring about a better world. Our vibratory frequencies will influence governments to stop the atrocities they perpetrate: war, famine, inequality, racism, violence, prostitution, etc. We can take back power and stand up for our rights to freedom, fraternity, and equality. We must live in harmony with the planet and have access to spiritual resources. We must strive to find the paradise within us, to vibrate with light and love. By raising our frequencies, we influence others who are not yet connected to this energetic movement. We'll finally begin to see a better, fairer, more peaceful and organized world, simply because we've changed as individuals and done our bit. It's the Native American legend of the hummingbird quoted above. During a forest fire, a hummingbird who was busy putting out the fire drop by drop was mocked by the others who saw his action as pointless. The hummingbird replies, "I'm doing my bit. We are the world, we are the change, we are evolution. To see the end of chaos, our quest for truth must lead us to a new way of life. We must live in harmony with the earth, revere the forests, lakes, rivers and sacred sites, and preserve them from any activity that would threaten these treasures. It's important that we feel uplifted and aware of the coincidences and intuitions that light our way. We need to modify our professional activities so that we only do what brings us a sense of fulfillment and personal accomplishment. Understanding that we are in abundance means giving money another vibratory and energetic level. Through compassion, giving and charity, we give to others and receive much more in return. This is the law of attraction, which I'll explain in more detail later. Freeing ourselves from the fear of lack and scarcity means freeing ourselves from the need to dominate. Protecting the ecosystem and feeding the poorest by putting an end to the inequalities and environmental devastation linked to ever-increasing profit must become our priority. Reaching paradise on earth by raising our frequencies is the purpose of existence and the fulfillment of human history. We come from creation, and we are creation. We are life. Our capacity for adaptation and our intellectual and creative potential are unlimited. At the moment, we only use 10% of our brains, but in the future, extrasensory capacities will develop more and more thanks to meditation, yoga, white magic, martial arts, gesture and breathing techniques, etc. We'll also have easier access to other forms of energy. We'll also have easier access to other modes of inner exploration, such as regressive hypnosis, which opens up access to ancestral memories. This technique enables us to reach the deepest level of the subconscious, giving us access to mechanisms and functioning that are sometimes buried or neglected. So if we become more familiar with these tools and use them more frequently, we'll be able to use a much higher percentage of our brain than 10%. Opening up to the understanding of the quantum world and our harmonization with the planet promises us a radiant future. Thank life, and life will thank us. Part 2. Cultivate benevolent values. It's up to you to decide how much of each emotion you feel. You can choose right now to be less judgmental and more tolerant of yourself and the people you meet. Behind every being lies a road paved with holes. We've all suffered. We are all emotionally deficient and traumatized. Let's stop judging each other and take the path of compassion. You can decide to become a kinder, gentler person, to stop getting angry, etc. Meditation and yoga are the best ways to do this. Meditation and yoga are a great help in teaching us to integrate into our lives the values of kindness and respect for ourselves and others. We can change the negative aspects of our personality if we decide to become a better person. Meditation helps us to see our emotional flows more clearly. Many books on human behavior explain that we develop defenses throughout our lives to protect ourselves, particularly in childhood. This can sometimes resurface as adults in the form of disproportionate reactions, if a situation rekindles past traumas, forgiving ourselves and others, and moving forward with the new goal of changing the aspects that damage our personality is essential if we want to be happier and truly fulfilled. Discovering that I was raped when I was 15 helped me to understand why I had been self-destructive for so long until I was 32. As a result, I was able to forgive myself for all my compulsive behaviors, stop taking drugs and alcohol, and stop everything that was hurting me. By forgiving myself and understanding my behavior, I gave myself permission to change my reality. The subject of happiness is a vast one, just waiting to be explored. Neuroscience talks about the power of the subconscious. We are what we think, so we need to revise our beliefs and thoughts and bring them up to date with our evolution. For so many years, I believed my teachers who told me I was useless because of my poor results at school. I based the beginning of my life on this false belief. Then the rape when I was 15 made me lose all self-esteem. I thought I was stupid and ugly until I was 25. To get my life back on track, I applied everything I could find in books on the subject of happiness. I started with the positive affirmations proposed by many personal development authors, including Yes I Can, Everything is Alright by Louise Hay, and 101 Ways to Transform Your Life, Your Wishes Are Granted by Dr. Wayne Dyer. There are an infinite number of books available to us, and we can also find them as audiobooks on YouTube. We can't be kind to others if we are not kind to ourselves. It's imperative that we stop the self-sabotage that sabotages our full realization. On my YouTube channel, i.anoKi, you'll find the playlists We Have to Learn to Be Happy, which bring together all the videos and audio I've listened to so far in order to transform my life. I haven't invested a single euro in the paid training courses that are sometimes offered. I've just listened and applied the recommended techniques with self-discipline. They are now part of my new lifestyle and have become almost automatic. I'm constantly practicing this new way of living, thinking and acting, and when I'm sure that the all negative behaviors have been definitively destroyed, I may allow myself a little more flexibility. The practice of mindfulness is an essential tool for our well-being. Without it, we remain prisoners of our thoughts without even realizing it. It's an unconscious mechanism. Thoughts invade us throughout the day, before we go to sleep and when we wake up. And this is why some people suffer from insomnia, as it was for me for so many years. By the time you go to bed, your mind must have done its work of conscious analysis, otherwise this operation will be carried out unconsciously as you fall asleep, preventing you from falling into a deep sleep. Your mind, in full activity, scrolls through the hours of the alarm clock, preoccupied with the I should have done and the mistakes of the day, as well as the doubts and worries of tomorrow. You can't fall asleep or you wake up in the night mentally restless. Practicing mindfulness throughout the day, as soon as we can think of it, enables us to avoid letting our minds overwhelm us with preoccupations from the past and uncertainties and doubts about the future. Mindfulness can be practiced at every moment of the day, but also at the moment of falling asleep. When you feel tired and ready to fall asleep, observing your thoughts allows you to decide what you want to think about before you fall asleep, to make it easier to fall asleep. In this way, Substituting gratitude prevents the mind from having a vacuum to fill with anxiety-provoking negative thoughts. Give thanks for having finished the day alive, even if you've been overwhelmed with problems, and give thanks for the chance to sleep in order to recover. Visualizing yourself in good shape the next day will enable you to find a solution to every problem the same day. In this way, the subconscious enters the alpha frequency, allowing the body and mind to relax and become drowsy before entering the delta frequency of deep sleep and loss of body awareness. Mental hygiene is essential for a fulfilled and harmonious life. Sleep is the basis of a healthy life and enables you to keep control and balance of the energies that accumulate over the course of a day. So if you sleep well, you'll have a better day, and if you have a better day, you'll sleep better, and so on. Of course, even if problems do arise, cultivating positivism is a remedy to better face the obstacles that can sometimes get in our way. We really must tame this monkey mind. Buddhist wisdom calls it this because thoughts move from one to another like a monkey from branch to branch. Gratitude is a value that most of us need to work on. This is all the more true for those whose upbringing is based on humiliation rather than appreciation. Our reconstruction and self-esteem depend on controlling our thoughts because when we don't observe them, we can't realize that they are sabotaging us and that they are toxic. To prevent them from having a harmful hold on us, we absolutely must observe them and replace negative thoughts with positive ones. Of course, to do this, we have to realize that our thoughts are negative. As the neuroscience explains, thoughts are negative, repetitive, and unconscious. So the one and only way to stop this process of negative and conscious mental chatter is to add our awareness to it through attention. We can use objects of concentration to help our attention stay focused on the object of our attention. For example, positive affirmations of gratitude or a pleasant color or landscape, etc. help to focus our mind on something positive and different from our usual unconscious, negative and hypnotic rumination. Paying attention to the flow of thoughts requires a great deal of practice and self-discipline, but this personal investment is essential for those who aspire to a change in their lives towards greater harmony, serenity, and joy. Of course, the thirst for change accompanies any quest for happiness, and is the path we begin to take once we realize that the experiences of our lives no longer satisfy us sufficiently. We're looking for somewhere else, and that somewhere else is within ourselves. Beginning the introspection of our unconscious is the key that opens the door to consciousness and our liberation. Freedom lies in the mind. We can decide to thank life before we find the key, or afterwards, once the door is ajar. It's up to us. But without a real sense of gratitude and thanks to life, the door cannot open fully and properly. If we want to change our lives, we have to know what we want. We need to be self-disciplined for a long time, otherwise we risk falling back into the temptation of our old automatisms, which are harmful to our self-fulfillment. The mind is very good at sabotaging our efforts, and we could abandon a new habit we've been developing for 6 months because of a lack of rigor. You have to fight your mind and the thoughts that sabotage your efforts. Of all the mental disorders that have affected me, bipolarity is one of the most disabling. Cultivating kindness towards myself has been the basis of my recovery. Applying the thank you with a smile that Dr. Wayne Dyer recommends in his book The Shift allows us to change our paradigm, our reality. It's not instantaneous, of course, and it doesn't happen by the operation of the Holy Spirit either, but with repetition it becomes automatic. You are what you think, so smiling and saying thank you in the morning is the first thing to do if you want to have a better day. That's how you can start to change your life. To transform your life, a paradigm shift and the accumulation of new routines are essential. Once integrated, they become the reality we choose. Of course, some moments in life are tragic, like when my brother committed suicide, and putting into practice thank you and smiling when we wake up is more difficult, but thanks to it, we can perceive the light in the darkness of our tragedies. Cultivating benevolence towards ourselves inevitably leads us at some point to become benevolent towards other living species in general and the planet. We need to move towards a way of life more in harmony with nature, which is our very essence. We need to return to our roots by reconnecting with our natural habitat and relearning to live in harmony according to its laws. We need to put an end to the unconsciousness of the past by ceasing to ravage our own nature, that which is external to us, flora and fauna, the environment, the oceans, etc., but also our very essence, which is ultimately part of the nature that surrounds us. We are the world, we are nature, we are creation. To destroy and pollute what surrounds us is to destroy ourselves. For this planetary community to function, we need to follow two natural laws: flexibility and diversity. As with a living system, the more diversity it contains, the more likely it is to survive change. Unless we're paralyzed by fear or despair, we are all creative and intuitive beings, and within each of us there's a path that lights our way and shows us the right way. By striving for ever greater profit, we allow chaos and pollution to reign in a naturally abundant world. We are under pressure from governments and all repressive central authorities, and individuals are not free and equal. We must let ourselves be guided by the synchronicities to orient our decisions and evolution towards cooperative and spiritual principles. This is our only way out of the current chaos. Progress must enable us to automate services so that we no longer need to work to produce the resources we need to survive. Money is currently the condition of our fulfillment, and this can only lead us down a path far remote from true happiness. Wealth is within us, not outside us. A beggar can feel rich inside because he has learned to cultivate gratitude. Conversely, a rich person may feel poor because he or she lacks this fundamental value of self-realization. At present, people consider remuneration more important than the love of work. They often prefer to earn more by doing something they don't like. We should not have to work like hell, but do what we love with passion. That way, we're much more productive because our energy gives us a much better return. This evolution will take place over the next few years and much more rapidly than we imagine. Only 20 years ago, the internet and mobile technology were just starting to be used by the middle classes because members of government or institutions such as NASA, etc. had access to it long before the general public. Just as we experienced an economic boom and then a technological boom, we're about to witness a spiritual boom. Eckhart Tolle is a spiritual teacher, writer, and lecturer who has written several bestsellers, including The Power of the Present Moment and New Earth. His main focus is on awakening consciousness through the practice of mindfulness in order to free ourselves from our unconscious, negative, and repetitive mental chatter. Loving ourselves must be our priority. You must be proud of yourself, of the existence you lead, and of the way you spend your time, whether it's working or having fun. You must love what you do and do everything you do with love. You must take the time to be with yourself. Don't stay in a job that no longer suits you. Few people after a few years continue to really do their job with passion. At first, they're happy and proud to find a job that gives them some vital energy and a salary. Working gives the feeling of being useful and integrated into society. Alas, this feeling does not last, and it soon becomes a burden to get up every morning to go to work. The noise of that damned alarm clock, the boss and the colleagues, everything becomes burdensome. At some point, we have to take back our life and our destiny. We have to make a choice, make a decision. Our destiny is shaped by our decisions. We are the masters of our own lives, and we have the power and opportunity to change the course of things. We can't live with the feeling that life is a burden. We spend most of our time at work, and this is often one of the main causes of our malaise. We are society, and without it, its laws and rules, we feel lost. It has shaped us so much since our birth, from school to our parents, grandparents, etc., that once we're adults, we feel unable to move forward. If we don't fit in, we risk feeling wandering, alone and weak. So when we look at how bad the world is and how upside down everything is, don't you think it would sometimes be better if there were no laws to govern us? An anarchic system where the only rule vital to the smooth running of life on Earth would be to cultivate love and benevolence could be a solution to the chaos we are currently experiencing. We live in a paranoia of attacks, wars and pandemics. We are the world, we are society, and nothing will change until we individually change. This change is our spiritual awakening and our efforts to eliminate from our lives everything that is harmful to us. This individual change is our awareness of the negative aspects of our lives and personalities, and our self-discipline to do everything we can to free ourselves from them. This individual change is our willingness to free ourselves mentally. This individual change is understanding that personal freedom and happiness cannot come from outside, they are within us. Freedom and happiness lie in our minds, and understanding this enables us to begin the efforts needed to achieve them. Our individual change comes from this awareness, and awareness means observation, and observation means mindfulness. Mindfulness can only be acquired through the daily practice of meditation. Ordinary conscious thought is voracious, seizing our attention in its entirety and leaving no space to observe its effect on our lives. The practice of meditation increases our level of concentration and therefore our attention. Meditation slows down the mental process and increases the awareness that observes it, giving us a greater capacity to examine the mechanism of thought. Without a reference point for concentration, such as the breath, a mantra, a color or an object to focus attention on, we can't develop greater attentiveness. Without a point of reference, we drown in the incessant waves of our mind. In the Vipassana meditation technique, the breath alone serves as the object of concentration to focus attention. It is the single point of reference from which the mind returns when it wanders. Without this point of reference, we don't realize that we are being distracted by our incessant, ever-changing thoughts. Our mind is just as wide as an elephant and needs to be tethered for a while before it can be tamed. Once we've become accustomed to the rope that represents concentration on the breath, we can remove it without the risk of our mind escaping, because we've trained and concentrated it through meditation. Meditation is the peg to which our rope was tied, which is complementary to the rope: concentration, attention, attention, concentration. Without meditation, attention cannot be developed through concentration, and it is concentration that enables attention to be developed. Attention and concentration work together. An individual change to live in harmony with ourselves enables us to live in harmony with others in benevolence. It's not complicated. We just have to do it, quite simply, in order to create our individual paradise, to create a better world altogether. We are the world, and it can change if each of us evolves in consciousness. It's on this note of hope for an evolution towards a better humanity and a better world that I'm going to talk to you now about one of the universal laws, the law of attraction. Part 3. The law of attraction. What you give to the universe comes back to you. We humans are strange. We blame others, or we feel guilty and blame ourselves or others for our own misfortune. When we are children, we interpret the behavior of adults and often misinterpret it. We reproduce erroneous upbringing patterns from frustrated, unbalanced, emotionally unstructured, and therefore often clumsy parents and teachers. Many of us have received an upbringing based on humiliation, resulting in very low self-esteem as adults. We don't really know how to act differently from the way we were brought up. We reproduce a way of acting and thinking modeled on our educators, but this model is erroneous and illusory because it is far removed from the path of consciousness. To be conscious is to be benevolent. If we are in patterns of emotional poison such as jealousy, envy, covetousness, humiliation, etc., then we are not on the path of benevolence. The law of attraction is a universal law which explains that what we give to the universe is returned to us and often amplified. It's the law of mental visualization in reference to ask, believe and receive, linking consciousness to a result. Put another way, it consists in believing that a direct link between our thoughts and reality exists. What you choose to focus your energy on eventually becomes reality. So if our mind is absorbed by negative thoughts, we don't leave room for positive experiences to come to fruition. On the other hand, if we control our mind and replace negative thoughts with positive ones, then our reality is affected. We can compare the law of attraction to the placebo effect, the thought that heals, and the nocebo effect, the thought that kills. See Chapter 1, Part 1. We vibrate our thoughts. Everything is energy. We are like magnets. We attract what vibrates at our frequencies. So if you live in fear of being robbed or assaulted, you're creating a strong likelihood that this will happen to you. Likewise, if you were often betrayed as a child and you have turned this experience into a belief, then you'll often meet people who betray you. On the other hand, if you're convinced that no one is really bad in themselves and that the human heart is good, then you're much more likely to meet wonderful people and feel as if you're surrounded by angels. Here again, meditation and the practice of mindfulness are really important for anyone who wants to vibrate positively. Gratitude, benevolence, and forgiveness are values to be integrated into a life based on personal success and fulfillment towards lasting harmony. We need to regain a clear vision of things, free from the prejudices that stem from our covetousness, aversion, illusions, disappointments, and wounds of the past. Our opinions and our ego interfere with and color our judgment, and by the same token, our mind. Thought is a complicated process, and we need to cultivate the presence of mind to avoid being trapped and bogged down in the chain of thoughts. One thought leads to another, which leads to another, then another, and so on. 15 minutes later, we suddenly wake up and realize that we've spent all this time in a daydream. It could be a sexual fantasy or a series of worries about bills to pay or anything else, from the most innocuous to the most perverse, sadistic or tragic thought that steals our attention from the present moment. Of course, this awareness can only come about if we practice mindfulness meditation by paying attention to and observing our thoughts. Without this, we can't extricate ourselves from the dream of our life, which is a mental nightmare for most of us, since it's made up of negative, repetitive thoughts. When we refer to the dream of our life, we are talking about the unconscious dream of the person trapped in his or her thoughts. This is different from someone who is living a dream, such as creating their own clothing brand. The latter will be much more active and busy doing everything in his power to realize it. With this goal in mind, the mind is busy and therefore has much less empty space to fill with one thought after another. Both people are living a dream, but one of them controls the dream, while the other is controlled by the dream, the thoughts. The dream that controls us is therefore unconscious, and since we now know that 90% of our unconscious is made up of negative, repetitive thoughts, that's why we are experiencing a nightmare. But the nightmare is drowned in all the illusion we've created around ourselves. We are caught up in our work, our family, our immediate environment, so we don't really realize that we are living a nightmare because we've got everything we wanted. But this illusion of a dream life is often the dream of others, of our parents, friends, family, and loved ones. We've gone along with what they think of us, such as having children before the age of 40, having a permanent contract for job security, a husband, and so on. In the end, we find ourselves living someone else's dream. It's in this false self that our mind becomes very active. It buries all our attention on the present with incessant waves of negative thoughts. They swirl around in our heads without our being aware of them. The only way to become aware of this infernal merry-go-round is to simply become aware. The only way to become conscious is to observe our thoughts. This observation cannot be made without the practice of meditation, which develops attention and mindfulness. Mindfulness can only be achieved through the practice of attention, and attention is acquired through concentration during meditation. The practice of attention gives attention. Concentration on the breath and the phenomena going on inside our bodies are the tools given by the Vipassana meditation technique. Vipassana means deep gaze. Without it, we risk stagnating for years before evolving towards a greater awareness of who we really are. It is also through this evolution that we become aware that we are responsible for our own suffering. Suffering is a mechanism we can stop, but to do so we must observe ourselves every day for the length of time we choose to meditate. The more we meditate on our attention, the more our attention will grow and the more aware we will become. People who are so busy with work and family life that they don't have 5 minutes in the morning and evening to devote to their mental hygiene are probably dependent on their exterior to feel they exist. Without this constant pressure, they feel useless. In the same way as we have oral hygiene, we must have impeccable mental hygiene. Without it, we are prisoners of our own lives, slaves to our thoughts. A person who has a day of rest but is dependent on the outside world for his or her sense of existence will have his or her mind occupied by all the activities associated with his or her life, work, family, and so on. Of course, their preoccupations won't be the same as someone who's unemployed, for example, but both, once left to their own devices, will find themselves with space to occupy in their minds. This will automatically fill up with a succession of thoughts, preoccupations, worries, anxiety, stress, etc., preventing both people from fully experiencing this rest. For most people, rest gives the mind the time to activate, leading to anxiety, insomnia, and so on. So most of the time, we find ourselves in self-sabotaging mode, and in these conditions, being kind to ourselves and others is complicated. As we communicate our stress to those around us through the law of attraction, this stress is reflected back to us, and it's a vicious circle. The same goes for anxiety and all the other emotional poisons that upset our inner balance. In many cases, you'll need to find the strength within yourself to do certain things in order to walk the path to happiness. Because if you don't force yourself, you won't go and do your sport and you'll stay with those kilos you hate so much. In the same way, you won't find the motivation to sit down and meditate for 10 minutes to cure yourself of your anxiety and fears, for example. Being fully happy without discipline is difficult. You have to decide to love yourself, then put your willpower into the intention of becoming a better person and changing everything that's lacking in you, your behavior, your friends, your work, etc. We need to be highly disciplined for long enough for the mechanism to be integrated into the subconscious program. Only then can we allow ourselves to be more flexible with ourselves. Neuroscientists talk about the 21 days it takes for our subconscious to integrate a new behavior. 21 days is the minimum time required to trigger the renewal program for the new software you want to download in your subconscious if we compare our subconscious to a computer. Before you decided to change your life, the software in your subconscious was a program implanted in you as a baby and child. We need to download our own program as adults in order to achieve the individuation process that Carl Gustav Jung talks about, Chapter 3, Part 1. We have to deprogram ourselves. This individuation process is equivalent to shedding the false masks we've accumulated throughout our lives. This attitude comes as a consequence of this implanted program, which was not what corresponded to our fulfillment and full potential. When the individual's life mission is the same as the implanted program, then there's no need to deprogram, since personal realization still takes place and the individual realizes his or her full potential. It took a lot of time, encouragement, repetition, practice and force for the baby we were before we could stand on our own 2 feet. It's the same with our new programming. We need to set aside a certain amount of time specifically for the practice of meditation in order to be able to stand on a stable mental footing. A certain amount of time is needed to implant the new program and make it function correctly and automatically with the values we have chosen to integrate into it: love, respect, appreciation, forgiveness, non-judgment, etc. And there's our being, and then there are all the emotions we have to live through in the course of our lives. We need to know ourselves well and not let ourselves be influenced by other people's opinions and programming. In parts 2, 3, and 4 of Chapter 2, I talk about parental and educational deprogramming in general. Everyone around us is programmed by beliefs, codes, and agreements that are not necessarily our own, which is what we need to deprogram all these beliefs in order to realize ourselves. Carl Jung explains this with the persona represented by all the masks we wear to appear like others and the process of individuation, which is the act of detaching ourselves from them. This is our life, and we don't know whether a reincarnation exists or not, so it's now and not tomorrow that we need to live it fully and in our own image in order to live truly happily. Learn only with reserve. A whole life is not enough to unlearn what naive, submissive you let put into your head, innocent, without thinking of the consequences. Michaud, Poteau d'Angle. Quote from Catherine Bensaide's book, Love Yourself and Life Will Love You. The denial of our desire in an existence where our behavior and even our thoughts are imposed on us without our knowledge can only have disastrous consequences for our health. This is the danger engendered by family and social hyperadaptation. Any attitude towards others is only as good as its absence of excess. While it's vital that we know how to defend ourselves, we mustn't always be on the defensive. While we must be concerned about how others feel, we must not forget ourselves. If we are to be available, we must not be at the disposal of others. If we must be able to give, we must not give too much, and if we must know how to be demanding, we must know how to avoid being too demanding. This difficult balance between ourselves and others is, of course, only a consequence of what constitutes our own inner equilibrium. In the same way, the need to rely on structures that are always external to us reflects a lack of inner structure. To avoid falling into either excess or illness, we may need to find the reassurance within ourselves that we sometimes expect too much from others. We must first give ourselves the means to find our own equilibrium before hoping to achieve it in our relational life. We are society, we make it up, so let's stop making ourselves sick by trying to over-adapt to it. Let's be who we really are. Each of us is different in the mission we have to accomplish. That's why we need to find our true selves, so we don't get lost and end up on paths that are not our own. Let's be us, with our flaws and our qualities. Let's put our strengths forward and try to improve our faults and turn them into strengths. If you often feel jealous and envious of others, in reality this feeling is normal, since we've been programmed since childhood to compete and be the best. Observe the negativity of this feeling within yourself and then transform this toxic emotion, which is a real poison for your soul, into love and admiration. Convert jealousy into admiration, and you'll see how it changes your vision of things, of yourself, of others, and of life in general. By replacing jealousy with admiration, you'll set yourself goals to achieve and cultivate goodwill, both for yourself and for the people around you. Becoming benevolent is important, and this benevolence starts with our personal fulfillment. If we are satisfied with the way we live our lives and we are fulfilled, there's no reason for us to be envious of other people's lives. We attract positive people because we vibrate positively. If we want to attract good energy, we must first be in good energy ourselves, and not in the bitterness and dissatisfaction that leads to covetousness, jealousy, envy, and so on. We need to transform all the negative emotions we've developed over the course of our lives, such as jealousy, envy, laziness, etc., into a positive opposite emotion. Each negative emotion reveals a positive opposite emotion. Convert jealousy and envy into admiration, anger and impulsiveness into patience, laziness into action, and so on. Take action now. change your life. Don't wait any longer. It's never too late to start, whatever your age. It all comes down to your will, to what you really want. It's time to take back your old and abandoned dreams. Don't listen to people who make you lose your motivation and who don't value you in your projects. Try again to achieve your goals. There are no failures, only experiences to learn from. And if you fail again, no one's stopping you from trying again until you're sure it's not your life's mission. You must do your utmost and try different options to reach your goal so that you regret nothing. Don't let anyone degrade your self-esteem. To do this, believe in yourself. You're a good person who deserves respect and love. You have to believe that you'll succeed in whatever you do, but you have to want it from the bottom of your heart, no matter how others look at you or judge you. This is your life, and the opportunity to live it will not come again and again in the form your physical body has taken this time if we believe in reincarnation. Seize the chance to be alive and focus on your potential for happiness by realizing your personal mission and experiencing transformation. There's no age to start. An 80-year-old will naturally focus more on personal transformation, transforming negative emotions into their opposite, than on carrying out external projects, setting up a business, your own brand, etc. Ending the last years of one's life by doing one's utmost to become a better person is the best thing that can happen to older people if they haven't already done this personal work. In this way, they prepare themselves for a certain death with no regrets, because they will have done their utmost, even if they came late. Better late than never. The spiritual path prepares us for certain death. It's an awakening of consciousness and a willingness to change and accept at the same time. Everyone has their own pace, but the hope that someone will make this decision, even at the age of 80, is not lost. Old age allows us to realize that it's not material success that we're going to take with us, but the values we've cultivated. Realizing at the age of 80 that we have such and such a negative personality trait and taking the decision to transform it into its opposite, jealousy and envy into admiration, anger and impulsiveness into patience, resentment and judgment into compassion, etc., is the most beautiful thing that can happen to a person who thought their life was over. After all, being happy is the dream of all mankind, and this dream has no time limits. You attract what you vibrate, and life will take care of certain often tragic experiences if you don't vibrate with the frequencies of happiness. Cancer, illness, death, accident, etc. Learn to listen to your heart and your instincts, and trust life to put you where you need to be for your soul to evolve. You're the creator of both your happiness and your unhappiness. It's you who chooses the impact of each event and encounter on your life, just as it's you who attracts what happens to you through your energetic vibration. The universe puts you to the test every day to help you grow in consciousness. Everything is perfect. Buddha. Part 4. The Divine Plan. Some philosophies, cultures and religions lead us to believe that our life was destined for us and that we choose our family before we reincarnate. This is how our soul learns what it missed in its past life. Karma, Maktub, it's written in Arabic, and the personal legend Paulo Coelho talks about are all terms that evoke the idea of fulfillment, reward and merit. This famous destiny that so many people talk about, this path we must travel to realize ourselves, this mission we must accomplish, and above all these regrets we owe ourselves not to have before we die, all evoke the realization of our dreams. It's as if we can't really have lived if we don't realize our dreams. But being born in a slum to an HIV-positive mother and a drug-addicted father, having a gangster brother, or being touched by a family tragedy can call into question our personal fulfillment in our dreams. Some situations are so heavy with pain that they cut us off from the idea of dreaming. Imagining a better life and a different destiny, envying the life of another, more normal person is often commonplace. But normality is different for everyone, and the vision we have of it simply depends on our reality. Normality is like a part of reality, so anything that's real and part of this world is normal. Whether it's good or evil, everything that makes up society is part of its normality. It's normal to see so many poor people and starving children, while multinationals gorge themselves on money. It's normal to see the destruction of the planet as corporations exhaust its soils to extract resources for financial gain. It's normal not to know what we're eating, so much so that industrial food goes through transformation processes and uses food additives. It's normal that some people in developing countries live surrounded by our garbage cans, which are used by children to salvage precious metals from the electronics that we, civilized Europeans, throw away. It's normal, it's reality. Sorry, but I find this sad and abnormal, but it must be because I'm neuroatypical, which means that the way society is thought of is different from the way I'd like it to be. So I prefer to create a reality that's my own, in my own image, more cheerful, even if I don't look like other humans and feel like I'm from another planet. I recently discovered that this is one of the features of Asperger's autism syndrome, now known as ASD, Autism Spectrum Disorder or Autistic Syndrome. Neuroscience explains that we have the power to transform our realities through our subconscious. We are what we think, so if we change the way we think, we change our reality. Similarly, epigenetics explains that by changing our environment, we change our genes. So I transform this reality in my head and make it different. I live in my bubble, and too bad if I don't look normal. What is normal? It's hard for me to give an objective answer because the notion and definition of normality depends on each individual, depending on the influence of their own history. Normality is a societal movement that we decide to follow or not, an influence in which we blend our habits and beliefs according to certain rites and customs in order to integrate and melt into a mold. The dictionary definition is character of that which is normal, and normal according to the dictionary is that which is devoid of any exceptional character, which conforms to the most frequent type, norm, which occurs according to habit. Example given: he is not normal, he is weird. I discovered Juan Branco, political activist, doctor of law and lawyers, during a YouTube interview, The Illusion of Democracy in France, from the Thinkerview channel. I recommend you read his book Crepuscule, which you can also find for free in an Audible version on YouTube. It denounces the normality in which those in power live, a reality which is normal in the world of politics and the media, but which will seem unfair and disgusting if you weren't aware of the facts revealed. Yes, it's a reality, it's how we live. We've made it a normality, even if we don't find it normal. This is the ultimate paradox of our society and our lives. We work to make the rich richer, to the detriment of our own happiness, freedom and health, and we ourselves are responsible for the societal norm we obey. I don't mind if I don't seem normal, because in the end, madness is like normality, and everyone perceives it according to their own reality. For some people, insanity means living unconsciously with insecurity about the future, for example, while for others, insanity means living in routine, confident that tomorrow is assured. Personally, I live life to the full and without detours because I don't know what tomorrow will bring. I like to put into practice the carpe diem philosophy, enjoy today without worrying about tomorrow. We have to do things with love, that's where our personal realization lies. Not attempting an experiment for fear of the outcome is a behavior that limits us in realizing our full potential and prevents us from fulfilling ourselves. It's not a sign of good mental health to be integrated into a sick society. Krishnamurti. If you think adventure is dangerous, try routine. It's deadly. Paulo Coelho. Know thyself, and you will know the universe and the gods. Socrates. The only thing Socrates knew was that he did not know. The greatest knowledge is ignorance. We can learn something from every human being. The system means that many people are not born with the same opportunities for freedom, equality, and fraternity. It's almost as if we don't live with the fear of our neighbor. We are in the judgment of appearance, and we no longer know how to listen to our heart. Take a look at the subways and you'll see how people behave, headphones on, no one looking at each other, fear of the pickpocket, fear of being asked for a coin, and so on. In this appalling reality, man is a wolf to man, Thomas Hobbes. Or in other words, man is the worst enemy of his fellow man. A brief aside, this pessimistic vision by philosopher Thomas Hobbes portrays man in his natural state as an unscrupulous being, acting to the detriment of his fellow man. According to him, in the state of nature, there are no rules, but men have natural rights to feed themselves, defend themselves, etc., and a natural freedom represented by the absence of external constraints. So if no one controls man, he is in permanent danger, as well as being a potential danger to others. Hobbes uses this hypothesis to develop his further thinking. In his view, to escape from the state of nature, something is needed to prevent men from acting like wolves. To achieve this, individuals choose to enter into a social contract in which they relinquish this natural freedom and autonomy to a sovereign. Instead of obeying the law of the strongest, they obey the rule of law and become free by ceasing to be subject to the violence and fear of their fellow man. If war is common in the state of nature, peace is proof of civic mindedness. In his view, it's a question of obedience, not servitude, because the social contract does not imply giving up everything. The right of peoples to resist remains unalienable. Interesting. We forget one essential thing. We all come from the same place, our mother's womb. For a long time, I hated my mother. I hated my mother for bringing me into this world without my having the chance to decide. I didn't yet believe in reincarnation, so I didn't know the concept of the soul, which after the death of the physical body, chooses its next family according to what it has learned in its former lives. I hated my mother and accused her of being the cause of my malaise. I blamed her for all my vices because I was not in harmony with myself. I even accused her of overprotecting me. I told you about the escape we all need to create for ourselves. I fell into drugs and alcohol when I started high school, when I began to wonder about life. I remember looking up at the sky and wondering about existence, the world, what I was going to become, the eternal existential questions. Who am I? Where do I come from and where am I going? The questions remained unanswered and I could not understand what was going on. I was lost. So I let myself be drawn into drugs, but I was adult and responsible enough to decide whether or not to follow that path. Apparently, it suited me. I had to live this experience. Marijuana gives you a sense of belonging to a group in which you feel less lost. I've smoked with people as lost as me. School is a mini society. And when you're too young, you start to lose your bearings. Cannabis, strangely enough, allows you to hold on to life by disconnecting from it. Your thoughts are less active and you see the world in a different way with your head turned upside down. Then, as everything turns upside down, with your head in the air, everything seems to turn around again. At that time, soft drugs proved to be a good alternative to my tree-like thinking. Nothing happens for anything. Our capacity for evolution is infinite. And every day we have to be open to growing even more. We learn throughout our lives and there's no age to start. It's essential to nourish the soul of our inner child and work on our fears of the future by living fully in the present moment. Let's try to do what we need to do in good time and stop procrastinating. It's better to say I want rather than I'd like, so that we can live our dreams rather than dream our lives. We must do our utmost in the present moment to make them a reality. We must give ourselves permission to live our dreams and believe in them and in our ability to make them come true. This book, among many others, is here to help you change the course of your destiny or confirm that you're on the right track. It's one of those books that helps us realize that ultimately the purpose of our existence on Earth is to experiment and explore happiness. We need to discover who we really are in order to know what's right for us. We need to be happy, quite simply, and if you're reading this book, it's because you're in search of that feeling, just as I have been for the past few years. Happiness is a way of living, thinking and behaving. The clearer our thoughts, the more our actions are aligned with the positive vibration. This is how we feel joyful. Happiness is a choice, it's a state of mind, it's a habit we have to put into practice. Happiness is like a flower, we have to nurture it, and sometimes we even have to cultivate it when we haven't watered its seeds for a long time. Certain therapies and spiritual practices such as yoga and meditation helps us to water the seed of happiness within us, making us live healthily in search of inner emotions and acceptance of things. We can make each day more beautiful than the last. Couples and children are often a source of anxiety and stress. Just as we need to leave a job that no longer fulfills us, we need to separate ourselves from the person with whom we no longer feel happy. It's an illusion to believe that someone other than yourself can bring you happiness. If you're waiting for the person who will make you feel loved, then look in the mirror, because that person is you. It's important that you change your life now if you don't feel full of love for yourself and for what you do. It's never too late, whether you're 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 or 70. It's time to evolve, free yourself from your burdens and listen to your inner voice. It knows what's best for you. It's important to have material security, not millions in your bank account, but enough to satisfy your real needs, because your well-being can't depend on the outside. Yoga is a miraculous practice because it connects body and mind and gives the feeling of "I've got enough," unlike society, which makes us chase after always more. Often our pain comes from our unconscious, and our body ends up with energy knots that are emotional blockages linked to what we unconsciously repress. We don't take enough time to free ourselves emotionally, and so the body alerts us by making us feel pain to tell us stop. A practitioner can give you relief but won't treat the root of the problem within you. I was the victim of a lot of sexual abuse, which resulted in behavioral disorders and chronic pain. I suffered from back pain for a long time, and yoga is the only therapy that has relieved my body and mind with meditation to amplify the healing of the spirit. I had to be very disciplined for 5 years when I did not miss a single day of practice, and since then I've been a bit more flexible. Yoga, like meditation, must be an integral part of our mental and physical hygiene. By integrating these practices into our new way of life, new habits are created. Just as we brush our teeth every day, we need to practice yoga and meditate. In the beginning, we recommend taking yoga classes to integrate body awareness so that we can stand up straight into postures. Then we can continue the practice on our own, the aim being to become autonomous, as with any teaching we receive. We no longer drive a car with an instructor at our side. It's the same with meditation and yoga. Once we can continue the practice on our own, then we must try to continue without a teacher. In this way, willpower and self-discipline are also put to greater use. Some people lack motivation and rigor, so they'll need to keep up the pace of classes to avoid giving up the practice. But as a general rule, we can become autonomous and independent in what we master. Yoga and meditation are two miraculous and free practices that help to regulate energies and emotions and unblock emotional knots. We must do everything in our power in this life to be as happy as possible. And that necessarily means living a healthy life based on physical and mental hygiene. Happiness is the art of living well, serenely, and meditation and yoga teach us this. If we want to be happy, then this means we have to transform ourselves in order to change our reality, to make it more pleasant and in harmony with ourselves. Meditation and yoga combine to help us do this. These are two practices that we now need to make part of our new life for the rest of our lives, in the same way as we brush our teeth for the rest of our lives. We need to get to know ourselves, to know our likes and dislikes. If we sometimes find it hard to choose what we want, we must at least recognize what we don't want. In the end, happiness is a state of mind. It's about realizing how lucky we are and seeing the positive and the beauty in everything around us. We were not born to suffer, and it's possible to put an end to the infernal circle of psychological pain. We are happiness, We are suffering, we are anger, jealousy, envy, forgiveness and respect. Practicing mindfulness on a daily basis and repeating positive affirmations contribute to our happiness. Example of positive affirmations I use every day to practice mindfulness. Gratitude. 1. I thank the earth, mother, the universe, life, the almighty creator, the Father, the Holy Spirit, my guardian angels, and God for the physical and mental health, peace and harmony, abundance and gifts I was fortunate enough to receive at the time of my birth in this physical body on earth, as well as prosperity and success, respect and truth, health and happiness. 2. I trust in life. I know I'm in the right place at the right time, surrounded by the right people to learn from every situation and encounter. 3. I make full use of my extrasensory abilities, telepathy, intuition, clairvoyance, regeneration, magic. 4. I master my mind, emotions, doubts and fears through meditation, mindfulness, yoga, breathing and sport. 5. I am aware of the power of my subconscious and that my thoughts are the creators of my reality. 6. To open the way for me, I have magic and my guardian angels from whom I receive signs and messages and with whom I am in communication. 7. I use my power of regeneration, mindfulness, imagination and magic. 8. I am gentle, loving, generous, respectful, caring, compassionate, a good listener, attentive, and I dominate my ego. 9. I am a shaman and a healer. 10. Everything is perfect. 11. I have everything I need. 12. I know life is guiding me. I am at peace. 13. I am my own circle of energetic distance. I stay who I am and in my own energy, no matter who I meet or what situation I find myself in. Forgiveness, compassion. 1. May we all find our way back to consciousness and be liberated from past suffering and trauma to live in peace and love, compassion, forgiveness, abundance, regeneration, and magic. 2. May all beings on this earth rediscover the paths of consciousness and find the strength to make the individual changes necessary for the evolution of our civilization towards a better humanity and collective global change. 3. I forgive humanity for its lack of involvement in the individual changes needed to participate in collective and global change. I forgive humanity for its irresponsibility in the face of the individual actions to be undertaken for the well-being of society and the happiness of its inhabitants. 4. I forgive all war crimes, bloodshed and atrocities committed against human beings and all species on our planet, including animals and plants. These phrases, repeated over and over, form mantras. We can slip them into our daily lives with every activity, every step when we walk or when we cook and so on. This allows us to integrate mindfulness into what we're doing and to direct our minds towards divine thoughts of gratitude, forgiveness, and compassion. Meditation opens us up to altruistic values. We become benevolent towards ourselves and others. We transform ourselves individually, contributing to collective and global change. Yoga and meditation help to regulate needs, since both practices offer the possibility of being nourished by divine energy. They help regulate weight and appetite as they instill a relationship of respect with the body and food. After many years of practice, we develop good eating habits and can eat whatever we want. The secret is in the quantities and in spending what we eat. Spending what you eat and recognizing the foods that harm you is essential for anyone who wants to feel better in life. Yoga and meditation allow us to reconnect with the love of our bodies while nurturing our minds. Yoga and meditation connects us to the heavens, to the earth, and to ourselves. These two ancestral practices give us back what modern, materialistic society has made us lose: reconnection with our inner being. This separation from ourselves and the illusion that consumerism engenders keep us living in this endless race for more and more. This frenzy of compulsive buying of things mostly useless to our happiness gives us the feeling of filling our inner emptiness. The only way to fill this inner void is to meditate, and the results are accelerated if yoga is also integrated into our lives. It's the same for all other compulsive and addictive behaviors with food, drugs, alcohol, medication, and so on. The addictive effect they have on us only happens because we feel empty and lack something inside. This emptiness comes from our emotional destructuring. Chapter 2, Part 2, 3, and 4. Our parents were not able to meet all our emotional needs when we were children. When we wanted a hug, for example, our parents were not available at the time to meet our expectations. This frustration accumulated as we grew up, leaving us with a feeling of inner emptiness. The impact of parents' inability to fulfill their offspring's emotional needs is even more devastating in children who have been mistreated, sexually or psychologically abused, and abandoned by their parents. If parents are alcoholics, drug addicts, or otherwise, then they are as good as absent from their child's life. This emotional destructuring does not necessarily mean that the adult child won't be able to cope with life, integrate into society, or start a family. But the void created by our parents' inability to fulfill our emotional needs at the desired moment will leave us with the unconscious sensation of always lacking something. As adults, we'll translate this emotional lack in another way and want more and more of that something that at first seems to be the solution to our unconscious inner emptiness. Yoga and meditation enable us to connect body and mind and feel this lack and feeling of inner emptiness. We become less materialistic and realize the uselessness of certain things to fill this void. We become self-sufficient and our dependence on external things and people gradually diminishes. Many people are beginning to taste the beneficial results of yoga and meditation on their emotional lives. Well-being and happiness require motivation and constant, regular, daily effort. It's worth the effort. Nothing else will adequately satisfy the frustration of your inner child. It's better to practice the yoga meditation duo 10 minutes a day than 30 minutes on a Sunday. It's regularity that brings results. Taking the time to integrate these two practices into our daily lives is essential. We must not look for excuses to find those 10 minutes. I've heard many people say that meditation is mental torture or that yoga is physically difficult. Certainly, sitting for 10 hours a day for 10 days meditating in a Vipassana meditation retreat, for example, is taxing. This technique purifies the mind by concentrating on breathing and scanning the parts of the body. Chapter 1, Part 2. Vipassana is one of India's oldest techniques. It was taught there 2,500 years ago as a universal remedy for the ills of humanity. Generally speaking, meditation helps to clarify and calm the unconscious mental chatter we are constantly subjected to. It allows us to observe our thoughts. It's hard to stay focused and almost impossible not to think for more than 30 seconds. But how did we do in school when we sat for hours on end listening to a teacher about a subject that did not interest us? The beauty of the soul and body brings a certain amount of suffering that is essential to personal evolution. In other words, suffering is necessary for the transformation and evolution of our being. Regular, daily effort in our spiritual practice quickly yields results, and the yoga meditation duo is a veritable miracle cure for those who want to shine. The illumination of our being and the light that emanates from it are worth far more than any social status or object of covetousness. Raising ourselves spiritually is our ultimate mission, the only one that will truly set us free. Sometimes we lose peace, balance, light, and hope. This makes it difficult for us to stay centered. There is certainly a state of alignment, peace, love, and gentleness with who we are, with others, and with life in general. A state of gentleness with what is, which makes us stable and balanced, is the most beautiful thing that can happen to humanity. This state of gentleness will naturally permeate our collective choices and actions. Once this has been achieved, no one will want to go back and lose it.